Hello and welcome back to the first of the season, Ball of Passion match review. Here with George and Chris, and we are going to break down this Forest game. But first of all, how is everyone? And then we're going to start talking about with the big breaking news of the day with Urian Timber and his injury and the implications of that in terms of what's going on with the timelines, the scans, etc., the mechanisms of action, all that kind of stuff. We'll break down for you, and then we'll talk about the game because I know everyone's clamoring for what's happening with Timber. So, first of all, how are you, gents? And second, how are you feeling about Urian Timber?
Good, man. Yeah, not too bad. I mean, it's been a good day so far. I'm excited to talk about the game because I feel like there's been a lot of misconceptions about what was a dominant performance for me. And I think that there was a lot of fear that went in kind of to really what was a 2 to 3 minute period. And I encourage a lot of people to go watch it back because I don't think that there was this loss of control that people kept saying. We'll talk about how I think we were really poor with our final action in a lot of moments, but fundamentally, I think that we pinned in Forest really quite well and bar a really unfortunate transition with Alenga, fresh Alenga against a very tired Ben White. I think that, it's unfortunate to give up that transition. It's loose. It's probably annoying because you give it up from a corner. And, I think a lot of people are just annoyed at the way that we give up goals so easily at the Emirates in general. But I don't think that you can then project it to having like a loss of control, us not being able to create. There was not 10, but there was plenty of chances that we created that I feel that we just didn't capitalize well on. In terms of Uri and Timber, I mean, honestly, it's annoying because you've got a first signing now. It kind of forces us into the market, but I think it's early enough into the window that we can kind of make that decision and go for somebody that I've really wanted since the start of the window. To go through. I think when you talk about kind of outcomes and whatnot, if it is ACL in terms of what they're saying and in terms of it being a rupture, it's 6 months, right? In terms of a full timeline. If there's another structure involved, like the meniscus, then you can maybe extend that to maybe 6 to 8 months because then you're talking about two structures instead of one. And the meniscus is just kind of like that cartilage that's around the front two bones of the legs. So from from a from a from a perspective of like, will he come back the same? Again, I think long-term outcomes, as long as you've got a really good rehab, there's no reason why he can't. I mean, you can have a Caicedo like ACL injury where you come back and you notice really no different from a long term. And then you can have the Hector Bellerin effect. And I think there's this gray area in between. Nothing's a foregone conclusion, but as long as he's kind of really diligent with his rehab, I wouldn't worry about a really large explosiveness concerns. I think he just has to get back, recover. It's annoying to have lost him that long, and I think that he hasn't really had a significant injury in his entire career. So it's just frustrating that he's barely in the door and he's got one. There's just been a lot of really weird medical incompetence claims on the timeline that I'm really not too sure why we have to keep perpetuating. Fundamentally, he either fails a test to continue or he doesn't. And, it's a really simple, it's called a Lockman's test or, an anterior draw test. And all you do is you basically move the knee forward and back. And depending on how lax that knee is, it kind of tells you whether or not there's a tear. And, you can't be sure of it being a partial tear or any kind of that minutia. But one thing that you can tell is if you don't have kind of that ligament there, it's really moves. That's basically what you can tell. And you compare that from the other knee to this knee. And that's the test that they do. So either, once we know that it's kind of a full rupture, which again, any significant injury, it takes 48 hours for us to figure out, right? Like there's swelling involved. So you don't really get an MRI until that swelling goes down. So any big knee injury, you're going to wait time. Um, and if it is, the 6 months, then I think we have enough time to kind of get into the market. And I would be looking at, the Ivan Fresneda, who I keep insisting that we should get regardless. It should have been something for me that the squad added. Because I think when you look at it right now, it's kind of nice that you're pairing a Zinchenko return with maybe a Timber exit. I don't love the fact that we're losing somebody like that, but Ivan Fresneda is somebody who has played left wing back, not quite left back, but he played left wing back, at Leguns when he first got started. But he's primarily a right back that, is more of an overlapping profile. And he'll give us that kind of sturdiness, especially as a defender. And, as a defensive prospect, he will give you that kind of sturdy versatility, both right back and left back, but also as kind of a dual expert. So almost 6 foot. almost in
Yeah.
terms of his height. So he's like a very sturdy option to have. So again, also what, 17 million pounds in total. So
Between 17 and 20, I think it is.
yeah, and so and then he's got a release clause. So I think it's a no brainer in terms of what we should do to kind of shore up the versatility.
Yeah. Chris, thoughts? How are
Um,
you?
no, I'm good. It was a dominant game apart from players coming on fresh for their debut and causing trouble from two actions, both in transition, both from our attacks. The first one was pretty hard to stop. I don't think we really could have done much apart from very high up on the corner to not lose the ball, and the other one, Party lunged in way too much. So, but yeah, overall for me it was a good performance. Um, Lacked potency in the final third, but we dominated the ball to a level we didn't really do consistently last season. I think we dominated the ball, but we never had, what was it, 79% possession. I think it bodes well for that lineup. And on Timber, it is sad to see him go because I didn't like who came on, and I won't like if he starts left back next game. Like Tomiyasu versus Palace away is something I would not like to see.
Me neither.
And that Timber injury invites that. Hopefully, he brings Arteta even brings in someone he wants, or just uses Tierney. I think it looks very unlikely that he uses Tierney, but we need an option that is actually effective going forward in that role. Like Tomiyasu really takes away from that role on and off the ball. Actually, he doesn't overlap, so he won't push up the line. Martinelli will always be touchline unless Rice goes there, and he won't really have success stepping into midfield. So the Timber injury is looking like it's guaranteed to be many months out. And Zinchenko has been injured for 3 months now. When he comes back, we'll probably get injured again this season. So what happens when Zinchenko gets injured? Let me not say when, because I don't want him to, but what happens if Zinchenko gets injured and we don't have Timber because he's probably out, as you said, for 6 months maybe. So what happens if Zinchenko gets injured? Do we play Tomiyasu there? Hopefully not. That's why I think we should either sign or use Tierney.
That's the problem. And for me, sorry to cut you off, but the main thing for me is I think me, George and Chris, we've all said that I think Fresneda should be a no-brainer. I think before this injury, never mind after. For me, you just need someone of his profile to come in. I just think that when you look at the market and you're looking at, Barcelona going for a Cancelo, let's say, and you look at the other right back options. Are there? I mean, I know people are going for example, Simican. I don't really think we need another centre back, fullback profile. I think we need an actual fullback. I feel like we don't actually have one apart from Tierney in the club. The rest of our fullbacks are kind of just centre backs. They're just there. So to have an actual fullback would be nice, especially on the right. I mean, we had this last year with Aaron Hickey as well. I think I wanted this kind of, and I've personally wanted an actual fullback on the right side for a while. So for me, it's interesting to see that profile it could be available again. And with Barcelona not moving for him, I do think that is definitely something we can manage and avoid FFP constraints, because I think, George, you mentioned earlier to me in a message, we were talking earlier, and you were saying the actual fee for Fresneda could be the Raya actual fee that we were meant to be paying this year. So yeah, so I think that personally it would be interesting to see that link return. I don't think short term, as in like the next couple of weeks, there's nothing immediate. Nothing immediate to be worried about. Zinchenko is training again. That's the main thing. I think short term we're okay. I think we've got to the window. I'm sorry again.
He's confirmed back in training.
He was warming down with the subs on after Forest. He's back in full training. So It could be the case. I think for me anyway, I don't know about you two. I'll let you answer this question yourselves. I think that for me, this is a make or break season for Tommy. I think he needs to establish himself as a centre back in this squad. I think otherwise it's getting to the point where I personally hope he's the holding replacement long term. I think that'll be the way he goes in his time with us. The backup centre back that can play if needed. I mean, what do you guys think about Tommy?
I think he's a central centre back. I think we've said it since he
2
was
years,
signed.
2
We've said
years,
it
yeah,
multiple times that
yeah.
he's a centre back in waiting. He just doesn't do things a fullback should do. He doesn't want to be high up the pitch. He's a good 1v1 defender, and he's
He's a
great in
great
the air.
1v1 defender.
Yeah, he's great in the air as well. And I think for Japan, anyways, in possession, he's good in build-up. He has been good in build-up for a couple of years for them. So for me, he's a centre-back. Always has been, always will be. And we see when he comes on at left-back or right-back, he takes away a lot from our attack and always leaves our winger 2v1. So yeah, for me, he's a centre-back. And if he continues as a full-back, should be gone. He shouldn't be a full-back anymore. But yeah.
I mean, we talked about Tommy on here at BoP for a while about being kind of a center back in general. I don't agree that it's surplus requirements, and for me, he was a deal that was excellent in terms of value. So I just don't see a need to want to push to get him to move on. I just think that we need to play him in roles that he thrives in. And fundamentally, when he came on in a 3-1-6, I think that him being a left center back was poor in a sense. I don't like the fact that he's left back or left center back there, where he's one of the outside center backs. For me, he's always been a central center back in general, especially as a backup. He's somebody that receives really well both angles, and he has a good passing range. But when he's receiving more as kind of the outside center back of a three, he forces his angles to the right. And I don't think that he sees the pitch in the same way. And I think he affects our build-up quite a bit when we do that. And he's somebody that's, probably one of our best 1v1 defenders in isolation. But I mean, if you're going to keep him out there and restrict the amount of build-up that's going towards the left in general, especially when you've got Kai Havertz, you've got Martinelli, you've got Eddie Nketiah, who all three want to run into the same channels, like you're going to have an issue. And I think that we saw that kind of space clog up just in general in the second half. But also in general, the left-hand side was struggling, and maybe we can talk about that pod a little bit later. But I don't understand the demand to have Tommy at left back when you've got Kieran Tierney still in your ranks, had a good preseason, would offer a lot of this stuff in terms of a kind of 1v1 defensive sturdy player that can still open up to the left. Like, you want to access that channel, and I don't think that Tommy allows us to do that in the back line. So my biggest thing is to kind of put him as the central center back backup option. Keep Kieran Tierney, let's say. You've got Kieran Tierney, Zinchenko, and go out there and buy a right back that, provides you with an overlapping ability and can play inverted, can have that ability to go inside. So I don't know if this was something that, I was against from the beginning as well. Like, I've always felt that even with, a Urian Timber, I felt that we needed the profile of an Ivan Fresneda in the squad quite a bit. I think the links to an overlapping right back in general across, this entire transfer window have been there and have been there for a reason, So for me, it sucks to have this injury, but it doesn't mean that I felt the profile of that type of right back was something that we lacked in the squad. So overall, I'm annoyed that we've lacked the option, but I mean, I still think we should go into the window and we should be, pursuing an option. Yeah.
Last thing before we move on to the actual game, because this is the match review. I'm going to say this, and I don't mean any disrespect by this. I need to this narrative that we are Man City to stop. We are trying to beat Man City. We're not Man City. We have a different way we approach our squad building. We're not the exact same as them. We need to get to a point where we allow ourselves to realize that we're Arsenal Football Club. We're not Man City Football Club. And I really think that that's got to be something we're going to have to embrace, because we have a very different set of profiles, especially in midfield, than Man City do. And we don't have a Haaland. So we have a lot more diverse options in midfield to create goal-scoring opportunities. Your Fabio Vieiras, your Emil Smith-Rowe, your Odegaard, Havertz. That's more of what we have. We don't have a bunch of defenders we don't play with 3 centre backs just to start with. So look, it's a different scenario. I just think when we talk, I think that's a good segue to actually what happened in the game, because we started with three centre backs, funnily enough, and with Partey playing at a right back. I mean, what did you make of the dropping of Gabriel, one, and secondly the tactical setup to start the game? I'll ask Chris first.
I didn't really like the dropping of Gabriel, because he started every single Premier League game last season. I think he looked good in pre-season to a certain extent, but the 3-1-6, I thought he was trying a new system. I saw it straight away. It's the perfect opportunity for him to try out this system at home, first game of the season. You're coming off a big bounce versus Man City, and your players your offensive players are fit. Partey was in a 3-1-6 as a lone DM a lot of the time. Rice sometimes dropped in, but the aim was to try outnumber that back five. And I think we got in some nice positions, to be fair. But we lacked a lot of potency, and Martinelli and Havertz, as we've said before, clashed. They wanted to operate in the same roles. They didn't really combine well at all.
But I think it's even worse with Eddie Nketiah broadly. Like, you have to talk about the pod as a whole, right? Because even Havertz generally, we saw a lot more of the diamond, by the way, and Havertz kind of operated a lot more central in general, and he had the freedom to drift either side, and that's really not a problem. But if you're going to have a Kai Havertz, right, like, he's going to want to explode in the space that gets left behind. And so when you have an Eddie Nketiah as a striker, what type of striker is he? Well, he's somebody that can come deep, but he's somebody that likes to run the channels. And by the way, he did it brilliantly over the weekend as well. Like, he had a really good individual performance. But when you combine that with kind of Martinelli, who's somebody who likes to come inside, who likes to attack the area on the inside himself, you've now got 3 players there that are running into the same spaces, and you could just see them stepping on each other's toes. And in general, I've always proposed this theory, like, look at your wingers and try to complement them with their central midfielder. Why do I believe that even though between Kai Havertz and even Trossard himself would have been a simple change that for me would have worked quite well in that pod? You need to combine areas of a team and ask them to ultimately have a collection of skills. Okay, when you look at a winger like Martinelli, he's a big space runner. He's somebody that likes to run both centrally, out wide as well, but he is a big space runner. He's not somebody that's ball to feet like Bukayo Saka. He's not creative in the sense that Bukayo Saka likes to receive ball to feet, play with combinations, and turn you. Gabriel Martinelli is somebody that does his creativity a lot differently. He's a lot more of a direct runner. He makes a lot more vertical runs, and he kind of uses his pace and his ability to exploit backline running as his creation method. When you've got a Kai Havertz who does the exact same thing, that's another player who, again, he can operate in combinations, but he's somebody that does his best work exploiting the back line. And then you've got Eddie Nketiah, who is another runner. You've got redundancy there. And I just think that we need to start to have a lot more complementary pairs. So when we look at Martinelli, what would work there? A high passing 8 in general. And so we've seen that before, and I think that that is going to work really good. So when you start to talk about it, it's not even just Trossard, but you could put Emile Smith-Rowe. That's another profile that could work there. In terms of Martin Odegaard, that's a high volume passing 8 that we've talked about on this channel. And even simply moving Kai Havertz to the right and switching these two kind of responsibilities would have been a better complementary pair for me, because we ended up not really accessing the left-hand side, and the right-hand side was purring. It was doing excellently, but we just lacked somebody that could put their foot on the ball and operate and build up and really offer themselves as a ball to feet option down that side. Everybody wanted to run. And so when you look at it, if we're going to be doing this again, we need to make sure that we're having the right balance on both sides and not just on one side. But overall, I just think that, we can't deny that this entire half was really dominant. And, especially that first half, some really good football was played there. And I think that, we have Hollywood wingers right now that gave us really Hollywood moments in general. But I thought some of the play that we made was phenomenal. Ben White sadly had a poor second half, but a phenomenal first half. And I think William Saliba was really, really strong as well. But But broadly speaking, that first half was an excellent display by Arsenal. We were very dominant in the final third. We were dominant in the final third across the whole game, by the way. You start to look at the field tilt and you combine some of the XG. One thing I'll say is a lot of people citing XG are really weird because the first chance with Brendan Johnson that we had accounted for 75% of the 1.25 XG that they had. And then when you look at it, the next large portion was the transition goal. Outside of those two chances, Forest didn't really generate any massive chance in the game. And, Arsenal themselves, I think what we struggled with was the final action. So we got into really good areas, but we struggled with the final action, whether it's a pass or a shot, to really generate better shot locations. But we were pinning them in. And again, we'll go to the man of the match for me, and it was Declan Rice. I think if you have a look back, that boy was everywhere. And I just think he single-handedly really controlled transitions really well. And he's kind of growing on the ball a little bit more, but fundamentally,
I think on the ball he was a lot more present. Second half especially. I think he got in the ball a lot more. He got confidence to start shooting. He probably could have scored that volley he had in the box. That shot he had edge of the box that was similar to Partey's shot last season versus Forest, if you remember. But he put it top corner, and this time Turner saved it. But I think he grew in confidence on the ball. He had nearly 90 passes. Saliba had 120. And that's things that only Man City do regularly. Their centre-backs and DMs have 100-plus touches, 90-plus passes. And I think the reason why these guys kept passing to each other, and if you look at the pass combination, Saliba, White, Rice, and Partey were just passing to each other regularly, because they'd pass forward and the ball would come straight back. What I wanted to ask you guys is, if Mikel doesn't change, say we see the exact same lineup next game versus Palace, I assume we won't, but say we do you think the same problems will occur, or we'll have a bit more success just because of the 90 they had together and them having another 60, 70 together?
Look, I mean, yeah, like at its core, of course, more minutes. But I mean, fundamentally, we also need to make sure that we're getting these guys in the right positions. Like I think that having them play together gives you minutes. But I mean, again, do I want to see more of Martinelli and Nketiah, Havertz, for example? No, like I don't. And so I don't think that that's really balanced. And so I think generally speaking, we covered a lot of deficiencies around that left-hand side with excellent defensive work rate from both fullbacks, but really Martinelli. I think if you look at some of the stats, he had something like
6 recoveries in the first half.
Yeah, and that's excellent. I mean, you're excited about that as a fan. Oh my gosh, thank you, Martinelli, for being humble and doing
that's
your work.
I don't sorry to cut you off, but I don't think that's wing back. He's playing like a wing back.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. And I think, well, do I like that? No, I actually get worried because then I sit there and I think, well, I'm not getting him in positions to score. If he's constantly getting that much work and he has to do that, there's an issue down that left-hand side. And so, again, I really enjoyed what Trossard has given us. And I will say, fundamentally, he was our best player preseason. And then when he came on, he was excellent. He did not do anything to deserve not starting. And for me, if you're going to play this pod again, just put somebody down in build up that's able to receive a little bit more. And I think we can have Gabriel, like when you look at the switch, Gabriel, who by the way came in at center back and did an excellent job. But if you play Gabriel, who is our first choice starter, and you add a Trossard, who is somebody that's got build up quality in the first phase, then you're not losing kind of any of the major qualities that you need at the back in terms of dueling, in terms of progressing the play, because you've got somebody that's willing to do that. And by the way, you could still play Kai Havertz. Just let him be up top. Now, the issue is, can you play all three of Kai Havertz, Trossard, and Nketiah? Obviously not. There has to be a decision that has to go into it. And I think that you need to make that decision based on the 9 that you've got, right?
But so I don't think his words support him making a decision. Like him praising Nketiah so highly, saying he trained so well, deserves to play. But he's going to continue to train well. So by that assumption, he's going to continue to play. So, and Havertz will continue to play as well. We just signed up for 65 million. So, and then add Jesus into the mix is a big issue. Like he seems very unsettled. Like he won't make a choice. This is my striker. So what do you think he has to do if he doesn't make that choice? This is my striker. Does Havertz go on the bench for you then?
Well, I think that you have to make a decision on the striker position, period. I think that, Eddie, and I've said it for a while. Like, everybody keeps asking me, like, what's the surprise sale? I've said it in circles. I think Eddie Nketiah could be a surprise sale. And I don't love it because I think that he's been excellent. And I think individually he's somebody. Look, Eddie Nketiah himself, we talked about it on this channel. We're big Eddie Nketiah fans. He could easily start for a mid-table club and score you 15 to 20 Premier League goal and assists in a season. You give him a full 38 season, that's his level. I think he's phenomenal. I think he's excellent, but I think there's redundancy there. And between Kai Havertz and Trossard, I see redundancy between Balogun and Nketiah. And I think there you've got two Hale end strikers that basically offer you pure profit. And so a decision has to be made. And again, questions can be pointed towards fund allocation of Kai Havertz, whether that was the best, allocation of funds fundamentally. I think we bought him for a future version of Arsenal. I keep saying it about kind of having that Holland-esque striker in Osimhen, and imagine him in the Kevin De Bruyne role. Like, he will thrive in that role. But until we get that, there's going to be issues. There's going to be redundancy issues. And I think if you're dead set on Eddie Nketiah being your starting striker and knowing that we've got Martinelli on the left-hand side, your 8 has to be a ball to feet 8. That's what I think, to answer your question, Chris. If that's the case, Kai is on the bench. Simple. Now, if Kai starts and he starts as a 9, then sure, you can have a different profile there. Like, you can have somebody else in the 8, no problem. But as long as you've got a runner at 9, you need a ball to feet midfielder. If you've got a Trossard or a Jesus at 9, you can have somebody in the 8 who is more of a space invader, i.e. Kai Havertz. That work, like, you need to make a decision on balance where you can't have more than 2 people that want to do the same thing. And by the way, one thing that I must add as well, even if you put Kai Havertz at 8 because Jesus comes in to start as a striker, there's going to be issues. Kai Havertz doesn't like overlapping wide in the same degree that a Granit Xhaka can. And he's able to do it. He can do it. But then you kind of almost waste the potential. Why are you asking your 60 pound signing?
He won't do it, though. He's been, well, not been asked, but it's clear there was times where he could have overlapped, probably should have overlapped, but he just won't do it. And I wouldn't really ask him to, as you said, I wouldn't ask him to do it.
Yeah.
It's not productive. He doesn't have maybe he has a good final ball, but that's not productive of what he does. His best thing is the movement. Him running late into the box, headers, shots from the edge of the box. But
and again, here I'm not comparing quality. I'm comparing the role. Look at the role that Kevin De Bruyne is asked to play here, and what you're basically asking is somebody to pick up the loose balls from a physical striker that has knockdowns and to feed in players. If you're really looking at it, and you're looking at, and everybody that's a watcher of this channel knows, like, I would prefer an Emile Smith-Rowe in that role, somebody that's got a lot more of that athleticism to provide dynamic overlaps. But again, I can't deny that Kai Havertz in that role would create something, and he would do a lot of the runs that you're asking a second striker to do. That's pure, Muller kind of asks at that point. But again, we have to make decisions for me that, pair chemistry together. Like, why does the right-hand side work so brilliantly? Why don't we analyze what works versus what isn't working? Because I think that's very easy and it shows you a lot of answers. So look at between Ben White, Bukayo Saka, and let's look at Jesus, because that's kind of, the striker that he's typically paired with, right? Bukayo Saka on his own is a unicorn. He will work with whatever winger that you do. When you look at Martin Odegaard has looked excellent in this role of being kind of more of a build-up 8, because Ben White is allowed to overlap a lot more. Why is that beneficial? Well, it gets kind of Martin Odegaard out of the physical battle in central areas, and it allows him to kind of pick up things more on the wings. And it allows him to have a freedom role where he isn't concerned with being either too vertical or a final product, because you're pushing Bukayo Saka on the inside, not wide. So in the end, you've got all players in zones where they want to be. Ben White doesn't want to be inverted. He wants space to run. You've got him out wide as the wide outlet in lane 5. Excellent. Bukayo Saka, look, that boy doesn't care. He can be wide, he can be inside, but let's make no mistake about it. You get him more dangerous the more he's on the inside.
Now, we saw it with the goal.
Well, exactly. We did see it with the goal. And then, once you kind of admit those things where Bukayo Saka has to be on the inside, you admit that Ben White has to be on the overlap, it allows Martin Odegaard to be central where he needs to work. And that is kind of the best thing about that side. So then when you start to compare, the left-hand side broadly, we don't have that same balance. We don't have that same ability to allow Martinelli on the inside. We don't have that because we've got basically Kai Havertz, who's somebody that, again, will refuse to do those overlapping runs in the same degree. And by the way, not just refuse, but like, why are you asking him to do that? He crashes the box best centrally. So keep him there. So again, it's not a critique on either way. And by the way, I don't want Declan. So when you start to talk about what are some alternatives to do that, I do not want to have Declan as a wing fielder.
We saw it. Kill us versus Monaco. We allowed too much space in transition, and we can't say you have Declan do it. You can't really have a Havertz dropping in and covering for him, or Timber covering for him. There's just too much space left there. But on this, for me, I think we play very free flowing football. I saw some great rotations. We saw a centre back overlapping the right winger into the box consistently throughout 60 minutes, not 90. He wasn't doing it full 90. I actually think he got a bit tired actually at the end of the game, but we saw great overlaps from Martinelli, White, Saka created well with Odegaard, linked up well, got inside a lot more than he usually does. And he said after the game, he's a lot more happier and more successful when he's inside. So we need to get him inside more. But what did you make of White? Because you said he had a great first half. And then obviously he was involved in the goal and should have done better with the goal. He was a bit tired, but what did you make of the first half or from Ben White? In a role he hasn't played in over a year now. He hasn't played.
I mean, he was excellent. You know what I mean? Like he's somebody that commands authority on the ball, right? And so I just think that Ben White is somebody that we overlook in quality quite a bit more. And I think that there's a lot of 11s that I saw in the summer without his name on it. I was very
Timber on it instead.
Yeah, I was very perplexed about that. I'll be honest with you. And I think that Ben White offers us a level of security and also a level of dynamic thrust that I think that we don't know that we lack until it's gone. And I do worry, by the way, that he's one of the players in the squad, and it's why I want an Ivan Fresneda who offers that dynamic thrust out wide, because I really struggle to replicate that thrust with anybody in the squad if he was to get injured. And, we actually saw, the effects of him still kind of working in preseason against the tired Alenga. Like, again, is there stuff that he can do better? Of course there is. But, I mean, he's tired against a fresh sub. So I'm not going to go.
It wasn't just what you keep saying, Olanga. It wasn't just him. Our knee just came on as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm using him because he was the matchup, right? Like that was the first duel that he lost. And then Awaniyi himself, like he's running into space. And again, nobody wants to talk about William Saliba, who probably should be doing a little bit better in terms of getting ball side to that, right? But again, both of these players were excellent in the first half and they just tired a little bit. And I think with the transition threats that they do, would Arteta be willing to basically have Kai Havertz in the 11 with Awaniyi kind of fit and knowing that he was going to play? I don't know. Like, I think those two offered a very different solution, and I would have changed the midfield a little bit more to kind of respond to that. And I don't know if Gabriel not starting is something that we would see long term. I'll be honest with you.
I think it's a very specific situation where we see that because that's his man.
Yeah.
He played all 38. He was top 5 in minutes, including keepers all season. So he is a very important player to Arteta. I think, that was just key. Like as soon as we sensed any trouble, and they brought on height, like they were a big team. Like when they brought their players off the bench, Kuyate, Chris Wood, and then they got a free kick, they just looked like a massive team. So we needed a Gabriel, and we saw Gabriel win his duels versus White and Saliba. No, sorry, Awaniyi won his duels versus White and Saliba. And we struggled with him for the 5-10 minutes between him coming on and then Gabriel coming on, and I felt a bit more composed. We haven't spoken about the goals. You briefly said we saw some superstar moments from our wingers. They are superstars. They are some of the best in their position in the world. Martinelli's came first, and Nketiah's goal came first. But Martinelli created the goal. He went on a run and played a beautiful pass between two players. What did you make of that? Because before that, we didn't really get clear-cut opportunity, but that was a beautiful piece of play by Martinelli.
Yeah, it was Hollywood. You know what I mean? And I think anybody that's saying that he didn't mean that kind of that turn was beautiful, and it was purposeful, by the way. Like he meant to pass that to Eddie and Getty. I saw a lot of stuff on the timeline that wasn't, but I I just think that he's really bubbling, Martinelli, and I think people forget like he came off the season injured. You know what I mean? And I think that he's coming back into form. He looks a lot stronger too, as well. By the way, like I think that Martinelli was somebody that was taking responsibility to build up, even though that whole left hand side was struggling. He didn't really care. He was kind of able to shrug off his responsibility and take a little bit more of it to himself and try to force the issue. I think he creates that goal, and then of course there was that. I don't want to throw shade, but there was a really poor analysis that I kept seeing plastered on Twitter about Eddie Nketiah not choosing the right option to shoot in that
I
scenario.
found- I
Let's
found that insane. I
let's.
found that insane, honestly.
Shall we pull it up? Let's just quickly pull it up.
Someone
Yeah.
could put the ball in the back of the net.
No.
He complained that he made
Let's
the
do
wrong
this
thing.
properly. Let's do this properly.
Yeah, because I've never seen a striker get criticized for scoring a goal. Like I felt that was poor. I mean, when Eddie receives in the box down there, any striker worth his salt is going to be head down and take that shot on
It's not
target.
even about head down. It's about even if you have your head up, why would you pass?
Yeah.
Pretty much on the penalty spot. Why would you pass?
And the one thing is, we should be praising Kai Havertz's movement to get into that position.
Yeah.
No problem. We can praise that separately. But why are you using it as a stick to beat Eddie Nketiah with? Who's your own player, who's done brilliantly, by the way, to get the goal and who ran the channels well all game. I have no idea. And you want to pass to, again, he's more free, but he's in the center of the goal. Like, I just don't understand the logic. He has one player to beat, whether it's near post or far post, right?
Like,
And
even
so-
if you pass, it's a harder shot. Like it's a closed angle from Havertz. He has to either wrap it far corner or like put in the roof of the net. Like Eddie has a lot more options and men in front of him that we saw the deflection help
Absolutely.
Eddie. Like there's men that could affect the keeper. So for me, Eddie's shot was perfect. I didn't even think he should have passed. I didn't even look. I didn't.
But I just think the play was excellent. It was really direct, and I think it was something that we needed to. I love the balance that both sides provide, where I feel that Bukayo Saka's side is a little bit more interchange and combination based, and then the left has a little bit more Hollywood explosion. I just think that when we've got that, Eddie himself, I think he was really secure in possession. I don't have the stats to back it up, but
He's
struggled
deleted
to
it.
see.
Nice.
Sorry.
He's deleted. Never mind. He's deleted it. I was going to read the verbatim tweet because it's funny.
No, I was thinking that
Eddie didn't play the pass. He didn't lose the ball once.
Yeah, and it didn't seem like he did. So I think he was just very, very secure, genuinely. The one thing that we kind of need to do is I think we needed to get him involved in the play a little bit more. I don't think he had as much touches as he needed to. And I think the same tweet mentioned that he made most of his passes backwards, even though that's a striker. But I won't get into
No. Out of 14, out of 14 passes, 13 were backwards. But
I was gonna tie this off because I agree with Eddie. He does give himself room to make the shot, but just genuinely, I think it's the shift and shimmy, and I love the purposeness of kind of like he doesn't let loose quickly. I think it's actually something that Jesus struggles with in front of goal, the composure kind of in tight spaces to take the shot when he's ready and he's on balance. That's the thing. Like I loved the pause to get yourself on balance and then take the shot. It leads to better contact, it leads to a better shot, and it leads to a better likelihood of it becoming a goal ultimately, shot analysis. But
I'm
still,
happy he took the shot. Like even if he missed, I prefer that he takes the shot, that your striker doesn't look to pass 13 yards from the goal on his favored foot with time to pick a position. Like if he chose to pass, even if he scored from a pass, it wouldn't make any sense to me. Like he can't pass the ball there, he can't pick to pass to Havertz there, and he scored a great goal. And again, kudos to Martinelli for having the awareness to create such a goal. And that really, for me, that changed the game a bit. Forest had to open up a bit. They had to try push up the pitch, and that created the Havertz cross, which again, Nketiah could have scored, but it got nicked right off of his toes. That was probably one of the only times they combined, Martinelli and Havertz. And it was a Havertz running behind on the left channel. Martinelli played a nice chip actually around, what's his name? Aurier. and Nketiah nearly scored. Well, we've already spoken about why we haven't seen that chance very often. But what do you guys make of Martinelli being a lot more willing to sit touchline, like just to sit and pass on the touchline? Because I think last season he wouldn't.
He wouldn't have
Even
done
when
that.
Arsenal
I
did,
completely agree. You
he
would not
wouldn't
have done
sit
that
there
last
and
season.
play that type of pass. So what do you make of Martinelli like maturing in the role of
I
a
think it's just
touchline winger?
instruction, isn't it? I think it's instruction and coaching. Like I don't think he personally. I don't like him touchline. I don't think I ever have liked him touchline. I want him, hitting the channels, trying to get into the making those curved runs into the left side of the box. That's where he's best, and that's where he does that's where he's most dangerous. We all know that his ability. I don't know how he does it. Like when he gets to the byline on the left side, like he decides, you know what, screw it, I'm just going to start taking people on from that spot. I don't know. He did it against Trent. He loves doing that when he gets to the
Because
to
he's
the edge of
looking
the
at
pitch.
he's looking at the floor.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
he's only looking at the
like
ball.
he's not
So
only looking at the like he decides, you know what, this is the perfect time to go and take people on instead of trying that a bit higher up in a bit more safe spots. But yeah, it's interesting to me that he was more touchdown. You're completely right. I think that it was a consequence of trying to get Havertz into those positions. We've been talking about on the channel about how it's interesting to see two runners in that same channel with Havertz and Martinelli. So I think the thinking was to try and get the runner in two channels, if that makes sense, to try and stretch the Forest defense and try and pull the fullback a bit wider so you can have a bit more space to run in behind. I don't know if that was what you guys made of it, but that was the thinking I thought was indicative of that specific
yeah,
tactical
I think
change.
him being touchline just stretched the space between the right back and centre back, or the right wing back and the centre back. And Saka did it well with Ole Aina. Ole Aina was stay touch tight, and he had success for maybe 10 minutes, and then Saka just took over and really dominated that duel. But then after that, it was obviously Saka's goal. He gets the ball, drives inside, and just Saliba passed him the ball from a corner. Actually,
Which
Hmm.
we
we
should
needed
talk
four.
about how incredible Saliba was in build-up in that first, because it wasn't the first time, by the way. Like I think there was times that we even struggled to kind of build off the right, and Saliba took huge responsibility to feed balls between the lines really quickly, because I felt that Martin Odegaard struggled himself to get into the game, and I think William Saliba stepped into the space
I think
brilliantly.
Scott McKenna actually did a great job on Odegaard. He followed him around the whole pitch, because usually when Odegaard drops deep into the right half space, someone's not there. Like he has a lot more time, which is why I think he probably has a lot more success in this role. But Scott McKenna, left centre back, really followed him the whole pitch. He did get like a foul or two, but he did a great job on him, but that then opened up spaces for other people. And Eddie could have scored from that side. Saka did score from driving inside. But yeah,
But
Saliba,
I kind of wanted to talk about one tactical thing that I noticed. So I don't know if you guys noticed this, but the pivot, so Partey and Declan Rice in general, right? For me, they split in the first half. So one would join the back line quite a bit, and I talked about
one
this in my predicted
would
libero
be like a
role.
four.
And yeah, and then the other one would split wide, right? And it created space between the lines for the eights. I think one thing that struggled kind of in that first half was when you're looking at progressing up through the right. Again, like you said, Scott McKenna did a great job with Martin Odegaard, but I think it forced a lot more space for William Saliba to step out or Ben White to step up. But the center backs had a lot more responsibility to carry into midfield because there was a little bit more space by splitting the pivot. One thing that I think it did was it opened a little bit space back there for somebody to drive into. But one thing is I think that we're going to start to see our center backs have a lot more responsibility to do that as the time goes on, right? And the one beautiful thing is I think Saka wanted to end on this. Did you guys see the backlift on that shot?
Ridiculous.
Minuscule. It was phenomenal, and I think I loved it because it showed a lot of narrative about what happens with when you let Saka go inside. Can he complete finishes? Is he a poor shooter? No, he's excellent. I mean, I think when you get him time and space, that boy will find any corner that he wants. And I think that the run, by the way, doesn't open really for Bukayo until Ben makes that overlap, and of course Saliba generating that pass in the middle. It gives him the space to basically have the time to take the shot in the manner that he does.
What I thought on what you said about the centre backs is something we tried to force, what's his name, Ruben Diaz to do in the Community Shield, like give him space, drive with the ball. Like, what are you gonna do with the ball? Because I think Gabriel had it a bit last season, and he probably will have it when he does play. They will sit off him, invite him to run with the ball, and hopefully he has the confidence. I think Ben White prefers now to run without the ball. Like, he loves a 1-2 now. He loves combination. He always has, but this game he passed it and then started running. He never really drove with the ball. He walked it up to the halfway line maybe 20 times in that first half. I think he was great as well. But yeah, Saka is just an elite finish. And then what's his name? Turner just laughed it off because he's probably seen that finish plenty times,
Plenty of times in training.
Over the
Hundreds
last year in
times,
training, he's
yeah.
probably seen that finish plenty times. But then after that, really, that we didn't really create much of note. I don't think we created anything clear cut after that in the first half. We still dominated the ball. We had 84% possession in that first half. And apart from that, Brennan Johnson chance, they didn't create anything either. And that was from a header from our clearance. So they didn't create that. They just won an aerial duel and they went straight in behind 1v1. So what did you make on the first half overall? Because for me, it was just dominant display with elite action from wingers that you want. Elite action from something we've lacked for a couple of years now. But yeah, overall, what did you make of the first half?
I think personally, it was just calm dominance. There wasn't a lot of like things I could nitpick. I think build up we were very good. I think just being able to control and keep the game in their half, we were very good. I think you mentioned Marseille a bit more touchline. I think there were times that the left side was kind of just trying to work things out a bit, but there was definitely a dominant performance especially that first half. I think second half we tried to look into, and we'll get into it. We tried to do a little bit more of, it's 2-0. We're just going to sit back and control the game, pass it between ourselves, and just try to keep them off the ball. Conceded a transition goal that personally I'm not happy with Ben there. Personally, I don't think that he's done well enough there. But Elanga's fresh. He's come off the bench. He's had a very good run. Anyone on the channel who's been a long-time subscriber knows my feelings of Elanga. I think he's a great talent. So I think fair enough, they got their goal. But the first half in specific, I think there was nothing you could really go, I wanted to see this differently. I wanted to see that differently. This was the main thing I needed to see differently. I think we were very dominant that first half. George?
Yeah, no, I don't have really much to add. I just think that first half was phenomenal. It was free flowing, in a sense. Again, I think there was times that we didn't really do the final action. We should speak on the Brendan Johnson chance at least. I think Aaron Ramsdale does brilliantly to close the 1v1 angle down. I think it was just an early jump from the back line, still getting accustomed. And, mainly for me, when you kind of have that first header that kind of, I think, goes out from Thomas Partey, or sorry, not Thomas Partey, but William Saliba, who kind of goes in. He doesn't track the runner behind him. And we've talked about William Saliba in terms of blindside runs. It is something for him to improve a little bit more. So I think that he needs to pull Urian Timber because he cheats left, right? And then he leaves Brendan Johnson kind of go behind. And that was just a communication issue for me off the jump. So it's nothing stressful, but I think we need to just communicate a little bit tighter there. But other than that, that was probably the only frustrating thing from me for the first half. I thought our set pieces also in general were really focused on the near post, I think, just because they didn't have Owanihi, kind of in. And I think that we tried to exploit that. I don't know if it worked 100% of the time. But really our superstar wingers were kind of the story of that first half. They took really efficiency to a whole new level. And I think that they were just so diligent in their defensive work rate that it meant that, we were able to really commit more bodies forward. I worry about this, by the way. Like, I love when we end up doing it, but broadly, I do really worry that we don't get these two closer to goal more often than we do. And so it frustrates me because they do in full honesty, feed off scraps in this sense. And so I'm gonna make a challenge. Like I really think Arsenal in general need to focus on trying to get these guys closer to goal and closer to the center more often than we do, and we need to facilitate ways that kind of do that. But yeah, that was kind of the story of the first half.
I mean, for me, just to piggyback off that, I think the main thing I want to see from us tactically as an evolution is overlaps from central midfield, overlaps from fullback a lot more. I think we, as you mentioned, just let our wingers feed up scraps at times, and they're so wide at times that they're just we see how much good work they do in those channels. Especially Bukayo yesterday, you could see that goal, but Martinelli as well. We've seen how many times he makes that out to in run, hit the channel and really succeed. But we don't really have the overlap from either centre midfield. I mean, Ben does it on the right a lot, and he's getting better and better at it. But on that left side, I felt like at times last season, Xhaka tried to do it. I think Declan's going to try and do it a bit. But I would love to see just like Kieran, you know what I mean? Like I would just love to see him just get into that channel on the left, the wide left, and just really hit that channel so he can get Martinelli in the box and doing what he does to do. But that's just a personal thing. There was one comment I wanted to bring up. Yeah, this one. I look, I had Forest 13th. I don't remember where you had them, George, but I think they are a decent lower to mid-table team. I don't think they're going to set the world alight, but I think they're good enough to stay up at least. And they did well at times to just to keep us out. But I wouldn't say that it was an overwhelming. Like I didn't feel at any time that we were under threat. Even at 2-1, I didn't feel like we were under threat. I don't know about you, but I didn't feel like we were under threat at 2-1 either. I mean, what did you make of that?
Well, no, I mean, when you look at kind of just in general, I think that we camped in the final third quite a bit, and so I didn't feel that there was any transition issues. Again, I thought Declan Rice was man of the match. Again, we haven't really talked about him, but I think that he was phenomenal in this match, making sure to control things a lot more, and he was a lot more economical with the ball in general. And I just felt that with somebody like that, we were dominating kind of really every space, and it was nice to have. When you have a look at kind of the Chelsea Liverpool game and the lack of transition control down there, you kind of look at our own game, and people are complaining about final action. But if anything, I thought there was no transition threat really. It's frustrating that we conceded a transition, right? And I think a lot of people will point to, does that mean that we have transition issues? No. It's frustrating. It's annoying. But how many times were we really exposed in that aspect? Not really. And even for a couple minutes afterwards, guys, we got control when Trossard came onto the pitch and we had Gabriel at the back. Like there was a 2 to 3 minute period, sure, where I thought, okay, let's calm things down a little bit. They just scored a goal. They're excited. They're exuberant. And there was a couple breaks that happened. But beyond that, when Trossard got subbed onto the pitch, we regained control really quickly. And so
we probably could have scored again.
Yeah, we should have scored twice.
Yeah.
Like there was multiple goals that were left on the pitch. The one frustration I will have, by the way, there was a couple cutbacks, and even in the first half when Ben White does beautiful overlaps and there's a cutback and there's no one crashing the box in the penalty spot. I could count 2 or 3 times that Ben White
you
did
see
that.
if you watch that game, if you watch another game, but that moment back, you see Declan with his hands on his head and his hands on his head, going, "I should be there." That's it's on the penalty spot. Like if Erdegaard's there, that's a goal. We remember the conversation. 2 out of the times out of 10.
If Erdegaard's there, it should be a goal.
What was it, Chris? 2 or 3 out of times out of 10, or
3 out of 10 times.
3 out of 10.
Maybe it's gone up now, but yeah, maybe 5, maybe 5. But yeah, I think we did create. Rice probably could have scored if Turner didn't make that great save when Rice going into the box, bomb corner. That is a goal against a lot of keepers. That's just a great save. Even the volley, he probably could have scored that as well.
Well, I was just about to say the volley is look, if we're being fair, and everybody knows I love Declan. He should have hit that clean. Like there's nobody there, and even the header out to him, like it's at a good height. Like I don't think it's at an awkward height that he's got to readjust midair or anything like that. It's a poor contact, right? And I think anything that he gets on target, by the way, with a clean contact, that's a goal in most cases. So I counted personally, there was at least 2 or 3 times in the box that there was free players that we really should have done a lot more. And I wonder if the narrative of the game gets spoken about a lot different if you're talking about your 4-0s and you guys get your predictions right. Like there was definitely opportunity to have that.
It could have been. It should have been a 4-5-0 game, not a 5-1. It should have been a 4-5-0, maybe 6-7. Like we should have.
We really
And
did.
if we perform like that again, it should be a 5-6-0. It shouldn't end 2-1, and I think that hurts us because, again, you guys expect it to be a 5-point, but it could go down to goal difference. You never know.
Let's be real, Chris. When it was 2-1, was there a part of you thinking, just don't get a third? I can't be having a 3-1 right now.
I promise you, if we scored a third, we would have scored a fourth. Like that's how, for me, like the first goal, anyways, the second one came straight after. I think when you score versus Nottingham Forest, Steve, somehow they just start pushing up the pitch fast, and you're always vulnerable after you score against you. So yeah, I think we probably would have scored a fourth. So I never stress on George getting these right. He doesn't really get them right too often.
You know, the other thing I wanted to mention is George mentioned the transition control, and the funny thing about the transition control aspect of it is that Elanga didn't run in because we had man inside. He ran to the byline. He ran wide and for the cutback. And for a team to have transition controls issues, generally, you generally see that they have a vacated middle in their rest defense or in their transition defense.
But why do we have a transition control issue?
We don't. That was literally what I was about to say.
Every team on the planet concedes in transitions, no matter how.
Yeah.
You can go look in the history of football. The greatest teams ever have all conceded in transitions. So you're going to concede some way.
This is what I was going to say.
And we don't see them counters. And because Saka seemed dead, he seemed tired. It is the first game of the season. White looked tired as well. He doesn't usually get bullied like that at the near post. Saliba probably would have been further back. Rice would have been closer. Like Rice was huffing and puffing just after the halfway line. Like they were really tired. And game week 5, that doesn't happen. Like, Saka and Rice get back. They probably get close enough to block it. But Elanga's fast and he just came on. So they shouldn't have got back. So for me, it's nothing to worry about. And it probably doesn't happen again. Maybe this whole season, because that didn't happen last season. We didn't concede goals like that, so I don't really expect it to happen. It never will be a worry for me with these guys in the team, with a Saliba, Gabriel, Ben White, Declan Rice. How can I worry in transition when we have those type of players on the pitch? No, I can't.
No, that's the main thing I was getting at. There was no if you have a team that's weak in transitions, you genuinely associate it with a vacated midfield. You look at the Bayern Munich Super Cup that was they played against Leipzig. They had issues because they had massive spaces in midfield. We don't have those spaces. The problem is as Chris mentioned, we were tired, and secondly, I think Ben got a bit too complacent with the run from Awoni.
I was just gonna say he checks back Ben White and he sees him that he tries to get goal side, but then he allows him to get in front of him, and that's something that he can't do. And they have bodies back. Like the worst part of all this, mate, is like even with Awoniyi doing excellent in terms of his drive, right? And even with Elanga doing excellent, we have bodies. Trossard gets back. Trossard is somebody that's just there with Ben White, and I don't think it was a lack of personnel. I do think that, for being fair, Ben is just tired. And, he does have to crash near post. One thing that I would say is like a defensive critique there is make the bet to go near post. Don't make the bet that he's going back post as a run, right? Like you've got Trossard that's going to find you there, and you have to communicate, I got front post, you get back. It's tough on the run. It's not something that you're basically doing in settled defense. But I think that's something that I would probably do as just a little bit of an adjustment. But then, guys, even after that, so that goal happens in the 82nd minute. And we've got this whole new kind of stoppage time edition with all the minutes, which I'm sure we'll talk about later in the season, because I feel like games are going to get insanely long. And this was just the first time that it happened, but I think we're going to have an issue with that later on. But we have a beautiful chance to score ourselves, and I'm wondering what you guys felt in those last 10 minutes. Did you feel that overshadowed the general perspective of the game? Because we do a 4-on-3 with Kai Havertz at the end, and guys, we should make more of it.
Odegaard should have scored when he got that cut back and he whipped it wide.
Yeah,
Odegaard probably should have scored. Havertz was 1-on-1. He got closed down. He probably was offside, but he was 1-on-1. He put someone 1-on-1 by the halfway line. I don't know how.
Yeah.
Aurier recovered. But yeah, that's two clear-cut chances apart from the other times where Havertz should have played. Was it Havertz? Martinelli should have played in Trossard, but instead he gets fouled. Well, he gets tackled on the edge of the box, and Trossard complains at him. Yeah, that's in the last 15 minutes. Trossard should have got 1v1 if Martinelli passes to him. Odegaard should have scored. Havertz is 1-on-1. So for me, that's 3 chances in the last 15. And I'm forgetting about some that probably should have made the game 5-0, 5-1. I'll say 1 because they scored. 5-1.
I mean, the
let
thing is,
alone
right,
the other things.
Yeah, but the thing is, right, if you just take shots on target, for example, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Deck himself had 3.
Yeah.
And Forest in there in the entire game, I think, had 5, maybe 5 or 6. I think and this is to remember, we weren't actually.
You shots at all or just shots on target?
Just shots on target.
2. Forest had 2.
So yeah, exactly. So that was the point I was going to make. Deck himself had more shots on target than Forest had the entire game. I think, but the shots that Forest had were, they had high XG chances, so it looks like they had this dominant performance. I think that's the main thing we have to take into account with this XG thing. I think there was, I think, game management wise, I think as soon as Awoniyi came on, I think Gabriel should have came on. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I think that's a response that you should have done for sure. But again, it's little tweaks ultimately. I would have rather Gabriel been the change, not Tommy. Anyway, it's like from the start. Like I think even as far back as then, and again with Gabriel there, I am more confident about us being able to deal with that physical battle. But in general, I felt very comfortable throughout the entirety of this game. I struggled with some of the balance on the left-hand side broadly.
Mm-hmm.
We need to address that going forward. I don't think that we see this lineup long term, but I think that we were just building into our first game of the season. I thought it was a dominant performance transition-wise. I thought we had a lot of play in the final third, and I would have liked to see us finish a couple more chances, especially one, so I could get my scoreline correct. But other than that, I didn't really see an issue with any big structures.
By the way, just because we're about to wrap up, I do want to just quickly clarify. We talked about Timber in the beginning, so if you do want some analysis on Timber, please go back to the beginning and watch. I want some final takeaways from this game, guys, and then we're going to wrap up. So I'll let Chris go, George. No, I'll go after Chris, and then George, you can do your thing at the end. So yeah, Chris.
I think we were really dominant first half, 84% possession. I think we lacked potency. The rotations were actually good, but players were just in unnatural positions. I think, we have world-class wingers that can decide the game for us. Finally, we have world-class players that the game wasn't on the line per se, but they really made it 2-0 for us. Them two individually decided the game for us. And I think tinkered a bit too much in the end. He should have trusted Gabriel earlier. Don't trust Tommy. Like, no offense to Tommy, but he should never come on a left back. So for me, we were dominant, and it's just growing pains. We're still tired. I think we're maybe at 70% of what we will be at our best game this season, and that's far from it. But it's good to go into the Palace away, like, not with a loss or draw, because we definitely deserve the win there. But dominance is really what I'd call it.
I think that's the best way of putting it. Dominance was a fairly dominant performance. I'm sure we could have pulled up the field tilt and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, it was pretty evident we were quite easily winning that game. It was just that they did a poor transition. These things happened. You need to just analyze what happened, how it happened, and move on. It's nothing to worry about. Obviously, we'll see what happened with Urian. I've seen the update. That is, for me, that's kind of maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it's kind of it's ambiguous enough where They haven't mentioned an ACL. I still think personally it's a posterior cruciate ligament, not an anterior one. But we'll see what happens and see what the scans say, and that will definitely dictate how long he's out. But in terms of the game, good start. 37 more to go. We move and we move on to the Palace game, and we move on hopefully to another 3 points. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, guys, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. You hit the bell for notifications to know when, in fact, we do upload. You can find all the boys' socials down below at GeorgeV_AFC, Curran at Curran BOP, and Chris at CKFTBL. And, of course, we're Ball Over Passion here on YouTube. We're at BOP Footy on the Twitter, or X, I should say. I can't say that anymore. But, yeah, guys, thank you so much for all of your engagement. We're looking forward to some more content with you guys, and post your thoughts on the match below after you're done with the video. But make sure you guys hit that like button before you go. So we appreciate that, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.
Peace.